What's up guys, this is Eric Vasquez here with a brand new design tutorial for you today from designcuts.com. In this tutorial we'll be creating a high-end rooftop party flyer in Photoshop. To do this we'll be using several freebies from the Creative's Vibrant Artistic Collection, including beautifully crafted designs from Every Tuesday, Opia Designs, and Studio Sun. This complete collection is full of stunning artistic resources that will help you nail the aesthetic you are going for in all of your design projects. For this particular design, we will be combining a versatile and elegant typeface with shimmering textures to create our flyer, which we will then apply to a realistic mockup full of verdant greenery, courtesy of Mockup Zone. So, if you're all ready to party it up, then let's fire up Photoshop and get started. Now, the first thing we're going to be doing today is beginning with our mockup. So go ahead and locate the freebies folder, and then inside of there, go into the mockup cloud subfolder and open up the floral pre-made scene that you find inside. Now, once we've opened this up here, I'm just going to go ahead and move my layers palette over a little bit, and you'll see that there's a folder on the top here that just says plant. So let's go ahead and press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and the first thing we want to do is actually move this plant down and to the left a little bit, and then I'm also going to scale it up by holding Alt, Option, and Shift on the keyboard and just dragging outwards a bit so that I can make that a bit larger, and I'm just going to reposition it so that it's over the lower left-hand corner here. Now, once you've done that, press Enter or Return on the keyboard to apply the changes. Next, press C on the keyboard to switch to the Crop tool, and make sure that you don't check off this option up here that says Delete Cropped Pixels. So that way, in case you ever need to go back, you'll still have plenty of your image there if you decide to crop your image differently. Okay, so now I'm going to click my cursor over the top middle handle and then hold Alt and Option on the keyboard and drag inwards to crop evenly from the bottom and the top. Now I will release the Alt Option key and just drag the top handle in a little bit more. In most cases, I like to leave a little bit more room on the bottom than the top of the image. And then for the sides, you're going to move your cursor over either the left or the right hand handle, and once again drag inwards while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys on the keyboard. Okay, now that you have a crop that looks like this, let's go ahead and press Enter to apply those changes as well. Now with that top plant folder selected, come down to the adjustment layer icon and choose Levels. And all we're going to do here is move the left slider in until it's set to around 10. 10 or 11 is fine. And then we're going to bring the right slider in until it's set to around 225 or so. All right, and that's just going to add a little bit more contrast here to our mockup. Now let's go into the letterhead number 6 folder here. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit and select this Your Design Smart Object here. And you can see that this is clipped to a mask. So this is just the shape of our flyer here, but once you have this layer selected, return down to the adjustment layer icon and add a hue saturation adjustment layer. Now you'll notice that this automatically has a clipping mask applied to it, so all we need to do now is come over here and we're going to boost the saturation to around 28 or so. Now it's not going to look like anything right now because we're just applying this to basically a white flyer, but after we create our design and return later, you'll see that this saturation is going to give it a nice boost. So at this point, let's go ahead and save this file because we don't want to overwrite this mockup file, right? We want to save this as something new. So I'm going to go ahead and save this with a different name. And for now, I'll just save it to my desktop. Let's go ahead and call this Rooftop Garden Party Flyer Design, and then press Enter or Return on the keyboard once again, just to save this to your desktop. You can save this actually in any folder that you want, but for now, I'm just going to save it there. Okay, so once we've done that, let's come back and locate that Your Design Smart Object layer, and we're going to double click to go inside. Now, this is where the magic happens. This is where we're going to be designing our flyer and adding our textures and everything else here. So once you're inside of this new Smart Object window, the first thing we're going to do is trash this Your Design layer because we don't need that. And you'll notice that the 3 remaining layers all have this small lock icon next to it, indicating that the position has been locked. And you can see that this is the icon which is selected, and if you hover your cursor over it, it does indeed say lock position. So let's go ahead and unlock that for all 3 of these layers here. And then we can get rid of this craft paper layer on the bottom, turn off that change paper color layer for a moment, just so we can just see the premium black paper texture at the very bottom. I'm going to go ahead and lower the opacity of this layer to about 80, but just by pressing the number 8 on the keyboard. Now from here, turn on the change paper color layer once again, and let's go ahead and change the blending mode of that layer to soft light. Now select that premium black paper layer again and press Command-Control-J to duplicate it, then Command Control and the right bracket to move it up so that it's above the change paper color layer. Now we're going to invert this by pressing Command Control I on the keyboard, change the blending mode to overlay, and then press the number 5 to reduce the opacity to 50%. So you should now have 2 copies of this premium black paper, except the top copy will be inverted and set to overlay with an opacity of 50%. And we've got that green layer sandwiched in the middle. With this top copy of the premium black paper layer selected, come down to the adjustment layer icon, add another hue saturation adjustment layer, and this time we're going to move the hue slider down to about -35 or so, and we're going to change the saturation to -31. All right, so you end up with this sort of desaturated brownish color here. But now what we're going to do is duplicate this hue saturation adjustment layer, which we can do easily just by pressing Command Control J. Now for this top copy, we're going to move the hue up to 150, right about there. Let's just go ahead and type it in, 150. The saturation can be set to 51. And for the lightness, let's enter a value of -10 to 12, should be pretty good, something about there. Now return to the adjustment layer icon, add a curves adjustment layer, and now over here in the properties panel, what we're going to do is click in the center of this grid, okay, and you'll now see that you have an input and output value field. So for this first copy, let's go ahead and enter a value of 117 for the input, come over to the output and change it to 127, select that curves adjustment layer again and go ahead and duplicate it. And now for this copy, go ahead and click on that point in the middle. We're going to change these settings, and what we're going to put in here now is 133 for the input, and then for the output, 123. Okay, so you now have 2 curves adjustment layers, 2 hue saturation adjustment layers, all on top of our original textures that we have down here at the bottom. Now select the premium black paper copy layer, the one that we inverted, create a new layer just above it, and then go ahead and press G on the keyboard to switch to your gradient tool. Now make sure you have a white foreground color selected, which if you don't, you can simply press D on the keyboard and then use X to toggle back and forth until white is the foreground color. And up here in the toolbar, we want to make sure that we have a radial gradient selected that fades from white to transparent. All right, so if I open that gradient editor here, you can see that it is fading from a solid white color to these transparent pixels. Go ahead and click OK. And now what we're going to do is click and drag outwards from the center of our design to create our gradient. And from here, we want to position this in this upper right corner where it starts to get a little bit dark. Okay, because what we want to do is lighten that up so that the tone is a little more even across the whole paper. So now let's go ahead and change the blending mode to overlay, and then I'll press the number 3 to reduce the opacity to maybe 30 or 40%. Let's stick with 30 for now. And if you need to adjust the size, just press Command Control T again, and then drag outwards while holding the Alt, Option, and Shift keys. And you can see that now we are sort of lightening up that corner, which was previously pretty dark with that shadow up there. All right, so at this point, let's go ahead. We can rename this layer if you want. I'll just call it Radial Gradient. Select the very top adjustment layer, hold Shift and select the bottom premium black paper layer. Press Command Control G to put it into a group folder. Double click on Group 1 and rename this folder BG. Now let's begin importing some of our elements into the design. Now to do this, I'll come up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded. And the first image that we're going to bring in here is going to be, let's go to our freebies folder. We're going to go into the Every Tuesday subfolder and choose the 12 gold PNG file, and then choose Place. Now, once you bring this in here, the first thing we want to do is hold the Control key and click on the image, and then we're going to choose Flip Vertical. Hold the Control key and click again, and now choose Rotate 90 degrees clockwise. All right, and then we're going to scale this way up by holding Alt, Option, and Shift and dragging outwards from any of the 4 corners of the bounding box. And let's go ahead and move this up a little bit as well. So we end up maybe somewhere around here with the size and position. And then go ahead and press Enter or Return on the keyboard to apply those changes. Now, let's go ahead and change the blending mode of this layer to Overlay, and then press 5 to reduce the opacity to 50%. Now return to the File menu and choose Place Embedded. And this time, instead of opening 12, we're going to open 6 gold PNG and choose Place. Hold the Control key, click on the image, and choose Rotate 90 degrees clockwise. And then we're going to scale this one up as well by dragging outwards from any of the 4 corners while holding Alt, Option, and Shift. And this time I'm just going to maybe rotate it a bit and crop it so that we get some of this texture on the lower left-hand corner here. And you can play around with the size and rotation. There's no exact, positioning for this. I'm just kind of eyeballing it and kind of seeing what pieces of the texture look good. All right, maybe something like that. And then go ahead and press Enter or Return to apply those changes. Press the number 5 to reduce the opacity to 50%, and then go ahead and change the blending mode of this layer to Overlay as well. Now with that top gold texture layer selected, hold the Shift key and select the one directly below. Press Command-Control-G to put them into a group folder. Double-click the Group 1 text and rename this folder Gold. Now hold the Alt-Option key with your gold folder still selected here, and click on the adjustment layer icon at the bottom of the layers palette. Scroll down and add a black and white adjustment layer. Now here we're going to check off this box that says Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask and click OK. And that's now going to make both of these layers inside black and white. Now let's go ahead and add a new layer to the very top. Press T on the keyboard to get our type tool. And I'm also going to bring over my character panel here, which if you guys don't have this or see it in your setup, just access it by coming to the window menu and choosing character. Alright, so now let's go ahead and create a new layer. Press T to select our type tool, and then I'm just going to click my cursor over here and type out the word garden in upper and lowercase. Now for the typeface here, we are using the Tropoline Script Bold typeface from Studio Sun. And in the complete bundle, you guys will gain access to a large variety of different weights and styles of this font. It's a very elegant looking typeface and very versatile as well. So as you guys can see, it kind of adds a nice little bit of style here to our design. But if I zoom in, I need to kind of connect some of these letters a little bit better. So to do that, let me press T to get my type tool, and then I'll just select the A and the R together. And over here in the character panel, maybe just enter a tracking value of, let's try -2. Okay, and now those letters are connecting a little bit nicer. All right, and then we'll also click our cursor between the E and the N here, and then hold the Alt-Option key and tap the left arrow once. So that way you can just kind of manually typeset some of these letters here. Now for the size, let's go ahead and change this to maybe about 58.5, and then we can duplicate this layer by pressing Command-Control-J, move this layer down one spot by pressing Command-Control in the left bracket, press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, click, hold the Shift key and drag it down, press T to get your type tool and click inside, and now let's change this text to say party. Okay, so once we've done that, we're just going to reposition this a little bit, all right, so that the loop of the P kind of sweeps along the descender of the G here, just like that. And then once you've positioned both of those layers, select them both in the layers palette, press Command-Control-G to put them into a folder, and then go ahead and call this folder Garden Party. Now press Command-Control-T on the whole folder there, and I'm just going to position this roughly in the center of the design here. Now create a new layer above that, press T once again, and now with a solid white fill color, just like before, we're going to type out the word Rooftop in all caps. Now press Command-Control-A to select that entire line of text, and this time we're going to go ahead and use a bold sans serif font. So in this case, I'm going to be using Tropoline Sans Black, okay? But honestly, any kind of bold sans serif typeface will work for this. If you guys have Gotham, if you have Avenir, if you have even Helvetica, something like that will work perfectly. But this is just one of the many fonts that you guys will get as part of the bundle. But for now, we're just going to be using this one, but it's a relatively easy font to substitute. Now, what we're going to do here is change the size, obviously, to about 9.5 to make it quite a bit smaller. And then let's go ahead and change the tracking setting here to about 360. And we're just going to then position this over in the middle until it snaps into place. And by the way, I think I have snap selected here. All right, and that's probably why it is helping, because I have these settings used for guides, layers, document bounds. It's just kind of snapping in place when I get close to the center. Now over here in the color, let's go ahead and click on that. I want to change this to the hex value 122325, which is a sort of a dark bluish green color, and go ahead and click OK. And I'll move this a little bit closer to my garden party text. Press T, click inside of the text box here, and now in the top toolbar, we want to go ahead and select the Create Warped Text icon, which is this T with the curved line beneath it. Now in the panel here, let's go ahead and change the style to arc, choose a horizontal bend, and then we're going to put a value of around 26 in here, and then press Enter or Return on the keyboard to apply those changes. Create another new layer, press T on the keyboard, and then we're going to click down here somewhere towards the bottom of our design. Now this time let's go ahead and type out the words Join Us For the annual, hit return to come to a new line, botanical garden, hit return once more, rooftop party. All right, so we now have 3 lines of text here. Let me just move it over a little bit so you guys can see all of it. And we're going to make some adjustments here. So click inside, press Command Control A to select all 3 lines of text at the same time. And we're going to start by making the point size here 5.5. Now select the second line and change the size from 5.5 to maybe about 8.25 to make it a bit larger. Okay, and then we're going to select the second and the first lines, and now we're going to change the line spacing setting here to maybe around 11, maybe like 11 and a half or 11.25. All right, and now for the bottom, let's go ahead and select that bottom line. And now we'll change the line spacing here. It's going to be a little bit different to around 10. All right, and the reason for that is because we have a line in the middle that's slightly larger, it's giving us a little bit of unevenness. So that's why our line spacing values are going to be a little bit different for those 2 lines. But visually, it looks even. All right, now let's press Command Control T, slide it over so that it lines up nice and centered. Press Command Control J to duplicate it, then Command Control in the left bracket to move it down 1 spot in the layers palette. Press Command Control T, click, hold the Shift key and drag it down. Press T to get your type tool, click inside and press Command Control A to highlight the entire text box. And now we're going to type out July 4th at 6 p.m., just like that. Press Command Control A to select the entire line. And here we're just going to change the tracking from 360 to about 140. So we're just basically going to reduce that so that the letters are a little bit closer together. And now press the letter U on the keyboard. Now for this, we're switching over to the rectangle tool. And in the top toolbar here, you want to make sure that you have none for the fill color, which is this white box with the red strike through it. And we're going to leave a 4-pixel stroke instead. And for the stroke color, let's go ahead and click here, and then click on this icon in the upper right. And we will once again enter the hex value 122325 that we used before. Now press U once again, and this time we're just going to click and drag out a rectangular box around the entire July 4th at 6 p.m. text. Okay, now select that rectangle layer, hold the Shift key and select the July 4th at 6 p.m. text layer. Hold the Shift key and also the left arrow to slide it over to the left, and then press Command Control J on the keyboard to duplicate both of those layers. Now you should have both of the new copies selected, and we're going to press Command Control T to do a free transform. Click and hold the Shift key and slide this over to the right, okay, and then just use the left arrow to nudge it back a few times so that the line is the same width and stroke as the rest of the box. Now press T to come and click inside here, and we're going to change this text now to instead say 32 Rector Street, or just the ST to abbreviate. All right, so now go ahead and select that top rectangle, hold the Shift key and select the July 4th at 6 p.m. And I'm just going to move this down here below the garden party text. Press Command Control T to do a free transform. And I'm just going to slide it over here so that it's in the middle along with everything else. Okay, and now I'll also grab that text box that we created here that says join us for the annual Botanical Garden Rooftop Party. Now let's go ahead and bring that down beneath the garden party text as well. Now something happened here where I just need to shift these boxes over. All right, these text boxes here for July 4th and the address. Okay, and now we are in pretty good shape. So what I'm going to do now is select that bottom text layer just above the gold in the adjustment layer. Hold Shift and select the text just below that garden party folder, and then press Command Control G to put them into a group folder. Double click and we'll call this bottom text. Now come inside of that bottom text folder and select that top text layer here, and then just tap it up a little bit to give a little bit of breathing room around some of those elements. Once you're happy with the size and positioning, go ahead and collapse that folder just like that. Now we can take this whole folder and maybe just tap it down towards the bottom a little bit more. Let me zoom out just so I can get a sense of the spacing overall here in the design. Now in some cases it may be a little bit busy behind this text because of that texture that we added. So let's just go ahead and select the gold folder, add a layer mask, and then press B to switch to our brush tool. And make the brush a little bit larger and a soft edge. So hold the Shift key and tap the left bracket on the keyboard to soften the edge of that brush, which you can see up here in the top toolbar. And then go ahead and press 4 on the keyboard to reduce the opacity to 40%. And as long as you have a solid black foreground color selected, you can now just begin brushing around the text here at the bottom and any other areas that we may want to just clean up a little bit to help with the readability here. Alright, so I'm just brushing around the text, cleaning up any little bits here that we don't want necessarily, and that definitely helps a little bit with the readability. Now let's go ahead and bring in our next element here. So come back up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded. And this time we're going to navigate to the Opia Designs subfolder inside of the freebies for this tutorial. And we're first going to open 5PNG. Click Place to bring it into Photoshop. And we want to sort of position this so that it's overlapping the garden party text a little bit, somewhere around there. And then go ahead and press Enter or Return on the keyboard to place it. And now hold the Alt Option key, click on the adjustment layer icon, and add a black and white adjustment layer. Check off this box to use the previous layer to create a clipping mask and click OK. Select the 5 Smart Object layer again, and this time come down to the adjustment layer icon and add a levels adjustment layer. And here all we're going to do is move this right slider in towards the center until it's set to around 220 or so, just to make it lighter so you can see it's kind of brightening up that silver texture a little bit. Now select the 5 Smart Object layer, hold Shift and select the top black and white 2 adjustment layer, both of which are clipped to the Smart Object. And now press Command-Control G to put them into a folder. Double click the Group 1 text and rename this layer 5. Okay, now let's go ahead and move this below the garden party text so that that comes in front. And what we're going to do now is open up that garden party folder. And I want you to hold the Command-Control key as well as the Shift key and click on the layer thumbnail icon for both of these text layers to create a selection around all of the text. Okay, now we'll select the 5 group folder here. And what we want to do is come up to the Select menu and choose Modify, Expand, and enter a value of about 10 pixels and press Enter. Return to the Select menu and choose Inverse to inverse that selection. And now you should still have that 5 folder selected. And from here, all we need to do is click on the Add Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the Layers palette. Okay, so you've now sort of knocked the text out of that shape and left a little bit of room around it too, just to help make it nice and easy to read. All right, but in this case, there are a little bit of these small edges that I want to clean up. So I'm just going to press B to get my brush again, bring the opacity up to 100 by pressing 0, and then you can play around with the brush size just by using the left and right brackets on the keyboard, just to get a nice small brush to come in here and clean up any of these tiny little details that we just don't really need. So just around here between the A and the R, there's a few. This little one here by the Y. And some of these other ones are okay. There's a little bit here by the D and the E that I'm going to clean up. And maybe even take this out here in the Y. A little bit here from the A, the R and the T. All right, and then once we've cleaned that up, that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and select that rooftop text. And we actually just need to move this up a bit. So I'm going to tap that up on the keyboard there to raise that up a bit, just to add a little bit of space there between our elements. Now let's come back up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded once again. And this time we'll go ahead and bring in the 6 PNG from Opia Designs and choose Place. Okay, and here I'm going to reduce it by holding the Alt Option and Shift keys and dragging inwards from any of the 4 corners of the bounding box. And I want to position this just about here. Okay, and what we're looking for is these sort of elements on the side here that sort of like curve and swirl out because we want to place these so that they're just above the rooftop text, right about there. Now press L on the keyboard to switch to your lasso tool, and we're just going to click and drag around each of these elements here, just this piece on the left side. Hold the Shift key and do the same to select the mirror of that ornament piece on the opposite side. All right, and then once you have them both selected, click on the Add Layer Mask icon, just like that, to isolate both of those pieces. Now, just like before, we're going to hold the Alt Option key, click on the adjustment layer icon, and add a black and white adjustment layer, checking off the Use Previous Layer to Create Clipping Mask box. Click OK. Select the Smart Object again, return to the adjustment layer icon, and add a Levels adjustment layer. And we're going to move that right slider in towards the left until it's set to 220, just to lighten it up like we did before. Okay, and then what we're going to do is select the 6 Smart Object layer, hold Shift and select the black and white 3 adjustment layer so you have all 3 of these layers selected simultaneously, and then press Command-Control-G to put them into a group folder. double click the group 1 text and rename this layer 6. Alright, and once again I'm going to move this down here so that it's just above the 5 group folder. And then I'll go ahead and move the rooftop text down a little bit more and zoom out so we can take a look at how we're doing so far. Alright, so you may want to manipulate some of these a little bit more. You can always come in here and maybe scale up these ornaments a little bit. Alright, just to try and get some even looking spacing here. Alright, and that looks pretty good. And then maybe I'll go ahead and tap down my bottom text as well, just to use some of that real estate here on our canvas. And while we're down here, I'll select that layer mask that we have on the gold layer and just brush out some of that background texture that's behind the word party here after repositioning that text. Alright, from here I'm going to select the 6 group folder and press Command-Control-J to duplicate it. Click on this small arrow here to expand it. Select the layer mask attached to this copy of the 6 Smart Object layer, and then hold the Control key and click on it and choose Delete Layer Mask. Now, while we're at it, let's go ahead and delete both of the adjustment layers that are attached to it. Press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and then just go ahead and drag this down here so we can get a better look at the ornament. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here just by using Command and plus on the keyboard. Hold the space bar and then click and drag around just to navigate through your design. And then I'm going to press L to get my lasso tool once again. And here I'm just going to come in here and carefully select this piece. Okay, and then once I've done that, I will apply a new mask. Press Command-Control-T to do a free transform. And click and drag inwards while holding Alt, Option, and Shift on the keyboard just to scale it down proportionally from the center. And then I'm going to reposition this in the lower right-hand corner. Okay, somewhere about there looks pretty good. And then once you've done that, go ahead and double-click on the layer to open the Layer Style panel. Check off the Color Overlay box. And for the fill, we're going to use that same fill color we used earlier, which was 122325. Click OK to apply the changes. And then press Command-Control-J to duplicate it, Command-Control-T to do a free transform. Hold the Control key, click on the ornament, and choose Flip Horizontal. Click, hold the Shift key, and slide this over to the opposite corner. Now we'll select both of those layers. Select the top one, hold the Shift key, and select the one below. Press Command-Control-J to duplicate both of those. Command-Control-T to do a free transform. Hold Control, click on either of those shapes, and this time choose Flip Vertical. Click, hold the Shift key, and now we're going to slide these up. And once again, hold the space bar and drag to navigate around your document. Alright, so that we now have a copy in all of the 4 corners. Now, some of this gold texture down here may be interfering a little bit with that the shapes down here, so I'm just going to go in and maybe brush out some of that while we're at it. Alright, just to clean that up a little bit. Okay, and you can definitely take, creative license with this. Again, there's no exact way to do this. It just depends on your design and how everything is looking. You just don't want it to be too distracting as you go along. Press U on the keyboard once again, and you should still have the same settings from before, where we have a 4-pixel stroke with that same value that we're using throughout, 122325. And now all we're going to do is click and drag from the upper left-hand corner here down to the bottom right, leaving an even amount of space around all 4 sides. Okay, so now that we have our rectangle, it's not visible right now because it actually got clipped and stuck in between the black and white adjustment layer and this gold folder. So all we need to do is reposition that layer, move it up here above the ornaments. Now you can see based on where this is that it's sort of interfering and overlapping these ornaments a little bit. But that's okay, we're just going to adjust this. So I'm going to try and reposition some of these ornaments here individually. Alright, and I want to make them the same. So I'm just looking at where these pieces of this ornament hit the border, and I'm going to replicate that for each of the 4 corners. Okay, and then the top. Because we do want it to overlap a little bit, and I'll show you why. Now, once you kind of have these evenly spaced out, we're going to select the top of the 4 corner ornaments, hold the Shift key and select the bottom one, and then once all 4 of them are selected together, press Command-Control-E to merge them into one layer. Now hold the Command-Control key and click on the layer thumbnail icon, come up to the Select menu and choose Modify Expand, enter a value of 10 pixels, click OK, come back up to the Select menu and choose Inverse, and now select the Rectangle 2 layer, which is our thin border going around, and click on the Add Layer Mask icon from the bottom. So now we've done the same thing that we did when we knocked our text out of this background embellishment, where we have basically the border sort of wrapping around with a little bit of space in between. So at this point, I'm going to double click on this 6-copy group folder and just rename it border. Now again, you may wish to sort of play around with the positioning here for some of these elements. So I'm going to select the rooftop text, the garden party text, and 5 and 6, which are both of these embellishments. And I'm just going to move them down a little bit closer to the center of the design. Come into my bottom text folder here, and let's also go ahead and tap down this text just a little bit. All right, a couple of times like that. And I'm also just going to nudge these rectangles over and make sure that my text is nice and centered inside. All right, and if you need to, you can select them all together and make some adjustments like that as well. And then once you're happy with everything, just make sure to save it as you go. And from here, what we're going to do once that's finished saving is select the 5 group folder, press Command-Control-J to duplicate it, and then Command-Control and the right bracket to move it up a few spots just above the garden party text. Now from here, hold the Control key, click on the layer mask, and choose Delete Layer Mask. We're going to come into this garden party folder, hold the Command, Control, and Shift keys, and once again click on both of the layer thumbnail icons for this text, for both of those, to activate a selection around it. Now select the 5-copy group folder and add a layer mask to it. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're actually going to turn off the visibility of the garden party layer. Now I'm going to rename this 5-copy folder above it to garden party. Open up the folder here, select my 5 smart object layer, and now I'm going to press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and you can see that as I begin moving this around, it's only filling in the actual letters for the words garden party. Okay, so what we're going to do here is use this texture to fill in all of the letters. Alright, so I'm going to start with 1 copy here, maybe scale this up even more. Okay, and just begin by placing some of these copies. So go ahead and press return to apply that change. Select the 5 smart object layer, hold the shift key and select both of the adjustment layers above it. Press Command-Control-J to duplicate it. Select the next copy here, press Command-Control-T to do a free transform. And I'm just going to continue moving, rotating, and scaling copies of this texture inside of this group folder until all of the text is filled in. Okay, so we want to make sure that there's no, weird gaps in here or anything like that. And we're just going to take our time, experiment with the size and placement, and just try to find something that looks good and readable. All right, and each time you make a copy, just play around with it, see how it looks inside of these letters, just so that we can add that nice sort of shimmering texture here that we have on the background embellishments. And you can see even after 4 or 5 copies that it's starting to fill in and look pretty cool. All right, so it's just sort of a step and repeat process at this point, experimenting with the size and rotation and placement of each of these copies until we filled in all of our letters. All right, and it may take you a few minutes to kind of get a nice looking result here. And then even then we're going to go back and sort of just tweak it and refine it a little bit to make sure that we get everything looking the way we want to. All right, so again, there's a couple of spaces over here on the E. There's a couple letters that need to be filled in. Letter N over here. Okay, and then let's go ahead and make another copy. See, I already have 12 copies of this just sort of stacked up here. But you can see how this is starting to look much more high-end and elegant, and it adds a really nice looking texture on top. So in some cases as you go through, you may notice that there are certain pieces of the letter that you may not want, which is totally fine. If that does happen, all you need to do is add a layer mask onto that layer, and then you can just brush it out like we did before. Okay, so for example, if I had, let's see, make one more copy here. Certain parts of this texture, like you can see in the D here, or even in the T and the R, they get a little bit too, dark and grainy. So those are some areas that I would watch out for that may need to be sort of masked out manually. But in this case, I think we did a pretty good job of actually avoiding too much of that texture anywhere in any one spot and resulting in a nice looking, pretty legible looking result. So once you have done that, just give your design another once over. Take a look at the embellishment in the background and see if there's any other areas there that you may want to clean up, like maybe between the D and the E here, maybe just this piece inside of the A, a little bit on the letter P over here, and maybe just that piece on the inside of the Y. Now at this point our design is in a good place, so I'm going to press Command-Control-S to save it, and then Command-Control-W to close the window and return to the main mockup. Alright guys, so now you can see how the result is looking, and you can also see that hue saturation adjustment layer that we applied earlier, which you couldn't see the results for until now. So that about wraps up our tutorial for today. This is our rooftop garden party flyer design that we've created in Photoshop. Now the elements we used today are just a small sample of the high quality resources you can expect to find in the complete collection. The work that each designer has put into creating these resources is evident in the sheer quality of each item, so be sure to go ahead and check that bundle out, guys. Now I hope that you have enjoyed today's tutorial, hopefully learned a few new tips and tricks along the way. We've covered some useful masking tricks and different ways to sort of customize our text, and working with some beautiful looking typefaces as well. So we would love to see what you guys do with these tips and techniques in your own work, so please be sure to share that with us. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Eric Vasquez here with Design Cuts, and we'll see you next time.